Hello friends, how are you? My name is Arith Härger and today I'm going to make a book review on the Asatru Edda, a work composed by the Norroena Society. I dreaded making a review on this one because I was in fact very disappointed with this work, so there is little to say that goes in favor of this work, which is why I have shared my thoughts on my various social media. I asked if, even knowing I was very disappointed with this work, you still wanted me to make a review of this book. You were quite clear that all criticism is welcomed, and here on YouTube as well you gave me your answers. So there we go, making a review on this one. But I want to make clear that I have no hatred for the people involved in this project, nor am I against the construction of such works. I'll try to be as neutral as possible. I want to make this review as a warning of certain sources out there that shouldn't be taken as strong foundations for virtually anything concerning Scandinavian studies. Because I found this book by reading an academic work of someone who consulted this book to create the scientific work. As I read the academic work, I noticed a lot of things didn't add up. There was a lot of fantasy. So I bought this book, which was the main source of information that person used for his supposedly academic work. Suffice it to say that it wasn't a good academic work at all due to the misuse of sources. Anyway, let's start this review. Before we start, I think it's important to have a quick panorama on the Norroena Society itself. It was a society founded by the end of the 19th century with the objective of collecting every source concerning Norse, Anglo-Saxon, Teutonic, pre-Christian historical past in an attempt to save the knowledge of the old traditions, spiritualities, myths, religion, and folklore. There were a lot of people involved, great minds who composed pretty decent scientific works concerning Scandinavian studies. I mean, the academic research was clearly there, faithful to the truth as much as possible, trying to bring to light the traditional past of Northern Europe before Christianization. To my surprise, 100 years later, this comes into my hands. So I got the impression that the original Norroena Society simply vanished or scattered and divided into other groups. This Norroena Society nowadays has nothing to do with the original society, and let me explain you why. As I have said, the original idea was to collect every possible information on the ancient history of the peoples of Scandinavia, as well as other Germanic groups. There were many publications, brilliant publications with real academic background, a real work of thorough research and investigation. What we have here right now is the final result of lack of research and greatly based on personal gnosis. I'm not saying this lightly. As I've opened the book, the first thing I read was this, and please pay close attention to my words. These are not my words. What I'm about to say is the idea expressed in this book, the idea that the time has come to break and move away from the academic field of studies concerning Scandinavian history, that it shouldn't be allowed for outsiders to dictate the shape of the lore and or the belief in the Ásatrú religion, because it doesn't reflect the needs and values of the Ásatrú religion. So, it's quite clear the Norroena Society's primary concern is no longer to base their knowledge on academic works, because scientific works on Scandinavian studies do not reflect the needs and values of the Ásatrú religion. So it's clear that what we have in here is a project not at all based on strong sources that for the past 100 years gave the foundations of the knowledge we have about pre-Christian Scandinavia. A work which denies scientific research because it is solely concerned with Ásatrú, with the modern religious reconstruction and not the historical past. Ásatrú exists because a lot of academics have been working really hard to bring to the surface the knowledge of the past concerning Nordic cultures. And now we have come to a point that Ásatrú wants to be a religion apart from anything else, with their own lore, their own ideas, away from scientific work, away from archaeological findings that give actual consistency to the old traditions. Ladies and gentlemen, I know some of you won't like to hear this, but what we have in here is an attempt to create a Bible for the Ásatrú religion. Something not based on the actual knowledge we have of reality, but based on personal ideals and values inside a modern religious reconstruction of the old faith. This is a paradox, actually. The main statement of the Norroena Society nowadays is to try to take out the corruption of Christian religious ideas out of the lore concerning Norse mythology, which is what in the academic field people have been trying to do, trying to divide what is Christian and what are Norse pagan religious beliefs. But then Norroena Society presents this work claiming the same thing, that the Christian religious ideas have been taken out. And now they present us a clean work with the actual pagan mind reflected on the myths. But this entire work is based on the modern religious perspectives within Ásatrú. So they try to take out Christian religious beliefs to put New Age perceptions and personal gnosis on the Nordic lore. You take out certain religious perceptions to cleanse the lore, but then you corrupt it again with information that goes against the old traditions, trying to save the lore by implementing precisely that which you are trying to save it from. I rephrase what I said earlier. This is not a paradox, this is a contradiction. We are all aware that the Norse myths and many of the old poems, the prose Edda, Icelandic sagas, etc., have clear Christian influences. It's been a hard work to separate the Christian from the pagan. And this separation is possible in many cases precisely due to the academic research. Not only historians and archaeologists such as myself, but other scientific studies and fields of expertise of the human sciences. When I researched about this book, it said its content was the result of taking out the Christian religious ideas and presenting the true pagan mind of the Nordic peoples. I was excited, of course, obviously, because there are many academic works and books doing the exact same thing. Quite the claim, but I honestly expected some strong statements. But the book isn't based on any scientific work or any real and thorough analysis of the actual lore and the actual sources that provide us with the knowledge of the Norse myths. And one of the first things I read right in the first page, and again, pay close attention to this, I quote from the book: "The gods sent a divine teacher, an immortal among mortals, who would bring all the necessary implements to build a culture and a civilization." For a society, Norroena Society, that claims that this work is the result of taking out Christian religious beliefs out of the Norse mythology and presenting a final result solely with the pagan spiritual perspectives of the divine sphere, this book astronomically fails right in the first page. The gods sent a divine teacher, an immortal, to teach mortals. I don't think I have to tell what this sounds like, because nowhere in the sources this was ever mentioned, ever. There wasn't a divine teacher in the Norse myths. The gods aren't even immortal. This isn't by far the only mistake of the very first page. This book underlines the idea that Christianity began a campaign to force the native peoples of Scandinavia to convert to the new religion and put aside their old faiths. This is a common mistake. Let me explain. Christianity, or rather Catholicism, did not have the same impact on Scandinavia as it had in continental Europe. Christianity wasn't brought to Scandinavia by Christian missionaries. Christianity was brought by pagan Vikings. In Viking Age Scandinavia, there were people who were pagan, some were Christians, and others were both at once. That's the thing with paganism. Adding yet another god to their pantheon was beneficial. Many Scandinavians would worship Odin, Thor, Freyr, and Jesus all at once. Christianity is marked by intolerance, but paganism is not. The pagan Vikings brought Christian ideas into Scandinavia and were quite happy with it, having yet another god in their pantheon. Christianity wasn't the only foreigner religion the Vikings brought into Scandinavia. Only later on, Nordic Christian monarchs started to force Catholicism on their subjects, but not in an attempt to make a holy campaign. It wasn't hard to convert people because the great majority had already adopted Christian religious ideas. Of course, those who didn't want to convert fled into Iceland, but even so, among the Icelandic heathens, there were a lot of Christians as well, and a lot of people who were both at once. They simply didn't want to be ruled and told what to believe in, and wanted to keep their own traditions. This book is feeding more hatred where there was none. Nordic heathens were quite happy with their traditions and adding more foreigner faiths to their own. The problem with Christianity in European ground wasn't Catholicism, it was the Protestantism of the 16th century. Certainly people suffered and were executed because of Catholicism. But if we compare the trials and executions in Catholic periods or Catholic monarchies with Protestant periods, there is a huge difference. Just a quick example. In Iceland, during the Catholic period, we have no more than 3 references of executions related to religion, and these executions are not clear. During the Protestant period, however, there were more than 100 witch trials, the great majority accused of sorcery and burnt at the stake. If they were male, if they were female, they would be drowned. Aside from historical mistakes as well as clear, serious mistakes on Norse mythology itself, you can't expect otherwise when a work is clearly not based on any source. There are other mistakes, some of which make no sense whatsoever. This book has a very good presentation. The text was formulated to resemble the accounts of Norse mythology, going from the creation and the first beings all the way to Ragnarok. It presents a version of the Norse myths and tells the story of each deity and each being. It is a very good idea, but constructed seemingly based on personal gnosis. What I mean with this is that the great majority of the accounts are personal interpretations, personal perspectives of the divine and the Norse myths themselves, creating accounts that were never written or ever told anywhere. There are gods and other beings we know nothing at all except the name, and in here it is given a very extensive account of their existence and purpose. This is a fantasy work. There is nothing wrong in creating fantasy. I myself, along with other people in the academic field, create Norse mythology related fantasy stories. I am publishing my own fantasy works right now on the Patreon platform. There is nothing wrong in creating our own fantasies and escape into other worlds. Diana Paxton does that, the author of Essential Asatru. She's very clear when she is creating a work scientifically based and when she is writing fantasy works. If Norroena Society had claimed that this work was fantasy, my approach would have been different. Neil Gaiman created a wonderful work of fantasy out of the Norse myths, and he was more faithful to the Norse myths than this work right here. But this is the exact problem. Norroena Society claims that this is a serious religious work. Listen, I'm not here to discourage you from getting this book and reading it. By all means, read it, take your own conclusions, but bear it in mind that this isn't an actual source that provides well-structured and reliable knowledge. Personal gnosis takes away the credibility of actual spirituality. If we are trying to revive the old traditions, we must do it with responsibility, not creating personal fantasies and claiming they are the truth, because no one will take such claims seriously. Our ideas must be supported with strong arguments and valid lines of reasoning. I repeat, there is nothing wrong with creating personal fantasies and using them to escape our own reality. It's only wrong when we claim our personal fantasies are the truth and we try to spread our fantasies to others, giving them religious truth. Anyway, there is a list of nonsensical mistakes I would like to give you, but this video is already getting too long and you already got the point. I mean, at the end of the book there is a glossary which would have been very useful if it didn't have so many mistakes. For instance, in this book, Nanna, the wife of Balder, is turned into the goddess of the moon. Mauni, a male god, is the god of the moon. Worse than that, Mauni in this book is brother of Nanna, but Nanna is his daughter. Seidr, in this book, is regarded as sorcery and a black art characterized by mind control, poisoning and necromancy, and banned by Odin himself because it was harmful and blasphemous. Blasphemous! A book that claims to deny Christian thinking and has this sort of view on Seidr. Worst of all, saying Odin banned this art when Odin is the only male god of the Aesir to practice Seidr, and Odin himself was regarded as a death deity and the best of necromancers. This statement makes no sense whatsoever. And right here in this book it says that Galdr, in opposition to Seidr, is the holy art of Odin. Precisely the Christian influences that created a clear division on Seidr and Galdr, saying one is wrong and the other is right, is still reinforced on a book that claims to be true to the pagan mind and not to the Christian influences. This book right here has more Christian influences than the prose Edda of Snorre Sturluson, who was a devoted Christian. I'm so sorry, I tried to be as neutral as possible in this review, but if I go on with the list of nonsense represented in this book, I lose my bloody mind. Because if this book was an attempt to strengthen the belief in the old traditions of pre-Christian Scandinavia, it has the opposite effect. But read this book anyway, if you can, even after this review. I think you need to be aware of the mistakes that are made, of the fantasies that are created and are regarded as strong foundations of wisdom. You need to be aware so you won't fall down the path of ignorance. I am not mad at this book. I don't hate the Norroena Society or whoever wrote this. I'm just disappointed, sad, and most of all frustrated, because there are people out there doing very hard work to bring to light the old traditions, to give plausible consistency to the old faiths. And then there is this, works such as this, who have a complete disregard for the work that has been done in the past century. It's frustrating when we build on very fragile foundations and then some ideas come along and shake the very fragile foundations and everything crumbles. If you are already familiar with pre-Christian Scandinavian history, religion, the sources, etc., this book won't influence you. But here's the problem. If you are taking the first steps into Old Norse religion, heathenism in general, if this is your first source, I don't think I need to explain. My good friends, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this review. See you on the next video, and as always, tack för idag.